first musical I ever wrote, I wrote when I was 12, and it was called Fred the Musical. Just all I ever want out of my days is to be in a room with ideally actors or, any creative people making something. I think if you're not surprising yourself as a creative, or if it ever feels too easy or too simple or feels like something you've done before, it's like meh. Effectively, we tried to go like, okay, what if a Hamilton cabinet rap battle felt a little bit more Croydon? We all know how stream theatre works. Anyway, it was. We
surreal. Don't. It's great to know.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
This is an insight. Okay, good. Yeah.
Do you feel like there are enough opportunities in new British musical theatre?
It's a big thing to think about. Half the reason I've ever had anything on is because I'm willing to have those conversations, and I love those conversations about how viable is this? What's our budget? What does it look like? How can we actually make this happen? Because I think, you can't be a writer without also being a bit rational about what's possible and what's not. We should chat about this on camera.
We're good. Yeah, we should.
This is too good.
Hello, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Make It Work podcast. I'm your host, Cluanny Saunders. So often, performers are encouraged to make their own work. So we wanted to talk to performers who are doing just that and give you some of the tools and inspiration to get out there and do it yourself. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our podcast. In the meantime, join us, learn with us, and let's make it work. My guest today is Jordan Clark. Jordan is an award-winning writer, composer, musical director, and improviser. His credits include Olivier Award-winning Showstopper, the improvised musical, and Mischief Movie Night, which was also Olivier nominated. As a writer and composer, he has worked on Happy at the King's Head, Friday Night Sinner at Soho Theatre, Angry Salmon, and with writing team Forrestal and Clark, he's worked on P.S. I'm a Terrible Person, shortlisted for the Stiles and Drew Mentorship Award 2021, and Public Domain, for which they were nominated for the Stage Debut Award 2022. Jordan was awarded the Cameron Mackintosh Resident Composer position in 2022 and is currently scoring new documentary, The Most Beautiful Noise, alongside developing several musical projects for film and television. So welcome, Jordan. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be here.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Well, my pleasure. I talk about myself like I'm
a third person.
Yeah, no, not so much me, but just, like I like to pretend there's more people involved. And of course we do have people who are helping out.
We do people behind the scenes.
So I include everyone who's in the studio.
You're an industry clue. You're an industry.
I'm an industry in myself.
You're full company.
But we here at Make It Work podcast
Clue Enterprises,
appreciate you joining us here today.
Pleasure to be here.
So I like to start with where it all started for you. I know that's taking it probably way back, but what first got you into music?
Wow. No, it's so nice to be asked that. I feel like I haven't answered that question for a long time, actually. I've always loved music. I've always responded to music quite viscerally. I'll never forget being 9 years old and being taken to Mary Poppins. I'd started learning the piano at 9 years old. And that was because I'd taken recorder classes at primary school, as I think everybody who lives in the UK did.
I certainly did. I think it's violin now.
Yes, things have definitely changed.
Things have changed.
But at one point, everyone had a plastic recorder.
Yeah.
And I was part of Recorder Club because I was really cool. And I just adored it. And my dad had this tiny 1-octave keyboard in the attic that needed 35 batteries to work.
Yeah.
And he pulled it down just after I started learning recorder, and I just started playing my Disney tunes on it that I played on the recorder in school. And I just loved it so much. So I asked for piano lessons, fell in love with that, had the nicest piano teacher in the universe, and I immediately wanted to play musical theatre and Disney. It's all I wanted to learn. So, within about a year of learning piano, my parents said we should do something to, show me what you can do as a musician if it becomes a career. And so we went to see Mary Poppins in London, got on a little minibus. We went with the local theatre watching group, so it was me, my mum and my dad. And then just all of the Sandras in Weymouth where I grew up, like all of the kind of the lunch club people who would go to see a musical every couple of weeks in London. And yeah, I cried my eyes out at 9 years old through like the whole show. I remember bawling my eyes out at the end, and my mum just turning to me and being like, "Are you all right? It's like, what's going on here?" And you know, I didn't really know what was going on at that age. When you're 9 years old and you have such a strong emotional reaction to something, you know, you can't really articulate that, can you? But I think that's why I guess that's why I knew it was so special, because it had moved me so much at such a young age. So yeah, I was obsessed with music straight away, and pretty quickly obsessed with musical theatre. Yeah, that was definitely the very, very beginning. And just quickly things spiraled, and I would just keep playing at school. I had lots of musical friends. I was really, really blessed with a warm, kind, creative friendship group.
Yeah.
I had this amazing music teacher. I had a couple of amazing music teachers, Miss Musgrove and Mrs. Edwards, who ran this department. And, you know, they just would get any opportunity they could for me and my friends to do music. They would give it to us, whether that was singing for Christmas concerts, or I used to play piano for the school assemblies. Yeah. You know, for hymns in the morning. And that was when I was like sort of 11 or 12 years old. And it just meant I got to play all the time. I got to play all the time. So by the time I was like 13 or 14, I was skipping geography classes to go and do extra music and stuff like that.
But you have such a facility. I mean, when, you know, you obviously play for a lot of improvisational groups, as well as, you know, we've run a rep class before. So your sight reading is insane. You have like a real facility for it. And do you think that is practice, or I mean, maybe this is hard for someone to say about themselves, but do you think there is an innate talent as such?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I'm like, how deeply do I answer that? I don't know if talent is something that we are, you know, literally born with. I do think like most of what we see in creative people is really hard work. But I don't think you can work really hard if you don't love something. Yeah. So for me, like, I just thank the heavens every day that I loved and still love doing it so much, because it meant that when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was go and play. Yeah. So I played and played and played. I mentioned my piano teacher. He was called David Symes, and he played brass in the local Salvation Army band. And he didn't have many students at all. He charged £10 an hour. Like, he wasn't in it for the money. He just loved teaching. Yeah. And he quickly became, you know, a good friend to me as a kid. And immediately he would get his Gershwin books down from the shelf and his Cole Porter books down from the shelf, and we would just play through it. So I was sight reading from the get-go, really. And again, because I just wanted to go home and play through Wicked, you know, sight reading, I sort of had to sight read to be able to do what I really wanted to do. So yeah, I have always practiced and practiced, but it's never felt like practice. I never enjoyed playing scales growing up, or any of the techniques.
Does anyone?
No, exactly. I mean, I think that's a good sign that I didn't enjoy playing scales. Yeah. So I never really saw it as practice, but because I just wanted to play so much, I did. Yeah. So, you know, as a almost byproduct of loving it, I now can sight read and feel very comfortable improvising musical theatre and playing for people. And again, I think to do all of that, you have to have a degree of confidence. And I always say any confidence I've got is just attached to the fact that I want to do it. I love it. I love playing for auditions and rep classes because I love being there. I love being there and you know, spontaneously playing new music with new people. And that's the sight reading element of it has just sort of never stressed me out. The improv stuff doesn't stress me out because it just excites me so much.
And then composition presumably followed at some point. When was that?
That was really early on. So before I even got into music, I was a story writer. I used to write stories. I loved it. Again, I had this friendship circle growing up that was just super imaginative and creative, and we'd always sort of role play and make up characters and stories about them. And pretty quickly I tried to write stories down, and all my English teachers at secondary school were like, yes, he's going to be an author one day. That's the journey. And they wanted me to really commit to that. But as soon as I found music, all I wanted to do was be like, okay, so if this story I'm writing was a movie, what would the movie score sound like? And like straight away started to just sit down at the piano and effectively just improvise at the piano. Probably was about sort of 10 or 11 maybe by this point. And yeah, again, I had this gorgeous piano teacher who, as soon as I said to him, like, look, I'm putting my own melodies down, he was like, great, let's start some theory lessons and we'll teach you how to write that out. And he used to, give me theory lessons with like flashcards and all sorts of wacky, wonderful games to try and teach me music theory in a way that I would enjoy. And yeah, really quickly, I was just writing down tunes and melodies. And almost immediately, again, it became musical theatre. By the time I was 12, I was like, I want to do this. I have to do this. So yeah, the first musical I ever wrote, I wrote when I was 12. And it was called Fred the Musical. And it was about the world's fattest boy who was best friends with the world's smartest boy. And me and my best friend just used to role play these characters.
Yeah.
So one day we were like, imagine if they sang. Imagine if they sang. And we would just stay after school. We weren't even at GCSEs by this point. We would just stay after school and jam and make up songs for them. And yeah, that's how composition really kicked off for me. And I sort of always knew I really wanted to write musicals.
Yeah.
I just used to be at home playing melodies, coming up with songs, singing stuff, scribbling things down when I could. And yeah, I was very lucky to be around people that were up for listening to it and up for singing it with me and stuff. When I was 14, I lied about my age to be in a local production of Rent.
Okay.
I told them I was 18, and if that tells you anything about how old I must have looked as a kid, they believed me. And I was allowed to be in this production. And I'm pretty sure my dad used to think it was like youth club at the weekend, and he would drive me to these rehearsals, and yeah, it was Rent that I was doing. And basically at that time I was trying to write a musical, like a proper one this time. I'd written Fred. That was my starting years.
At 12.
At 12, yes. And by this time I wanted to write something a bit more serious. And yeah, I used to just bring in these songs, and after a rehearsal of Rent, this brilliant cast of sort of, they were all sort of 19, 20 years old, and some of them were a bit older than that, I guess. And they would just sing through it with me, which just gave me all the like joy and confidence in the world, I guess, to just try stuff out. And they definitely allowed me to not be scared of it. That's one of the best things that, that group of people ever gave to me, was just the ability to write stuff down, have faith in it, and share it with people. And I'm grateful I had that quite early on, I was really lucky when I was sort of 15 or 16. I was still at secondary school in Weymouth in Dorset. And the drama teacher in this school was like, you need to get out of Weymouth. You need to get out of Dorset and go somewhere, where there's going to be people like you who are really excited by the arts and who are going to give you opportunities to develop these skills. And she found out about a school called Chetham's School of Music, which I went to before RAM. And that's like, it's like Hogwarts for music. It was amazing. It was the most incredible 2 years of my life. I auditioned for there and I got in. And I auditioned as a pianist because at that time I didn't realise you could study composition.
Oh, right.
I didn't realise it was a career path, really. I didn't realise it was something you could do. So I went as a pianist, and I remember being like 16 years old, I sang Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again from Phantom. And they were just like, you could be here as a composer, don't you? And at that point, my mind was blown. I was like, no, I did not know that. Thank you. So I spent 2 years there studying music composition and writing more musical theatre. But that in those 2 years, they opened my eyes to chamber music and instrumental music and classical music and film scores and all this other world of music, where up to that point, my music education had purely been musicals.
Yeah.
Relatable, I'm sure. I'm not the only one. But then came RAM, and RAM was, I was 18 and I moved to London to study composition at RAM, and that was 4 years. And I went to RAM because I really wanted to get involved in the musical theatre department there. I really thought hard about where I might want to go and do a degree in music composition. And yeah, it was like the one place that actually had a department dedicated to musicals as well. So I was like, okay, that's the one, gonna go to RAM. Yeah, and I spent 4 years there.
You're always looking to make connections, find people to collaborate with, and make things. So you must constantly be writing.
I wish. If I had a little bit more discipline, I would constantly be writing. Sadly, I am the biggest deadline fan. The reason I get stuff out is because I give myself a lot of deadlines, and I'm given a lot of deadlines. I say I'm not constantly writing. If you were to zoom out of my life, it probably would look like I'm constantly writing. And I don't know why that is. I love collaborating. I love people so much. Like I love it. All I ever want out of my days is to be in a room with ideally actors or, any creative people making something. And I've just always found that the best way to do that is to write things and the whole idea of like make your own work, which I know is something that you do all the time as well. Like I know that's how we met, really, wasn't it? That you had written your own show, and part of the reason I wanted to do that was because I was like, oh my goodness, there's this actor, producer, writer out there who's got their own thing, and I loved that experience, and that's really sort of just indicative of all the experiences I love the most, which is where whether it's me or someone else has had an original idea and they're making it happen somehow, whether there's money or not, whether there's resources or not, it's happening. We're going to get together and make it happen. The word there is collaboration. I just love being in the room with people, spontaneously making stuff, supporting each other, and making something out of nothing, I guess. So I'm very, very bad at writing on my own. Very bad at writing on my own. I'm really poor at giving myself a good deadline or giving myself a goal even. I have so many possible ideas and so many things I could write at any given time, but if I don't have someone to write for or something I'm working towards, I find it very hard. So I think that's half the reason I've wound up being at all prolific by any means. It's just because if I don't have an end in sight for a project, I won't get there. So it's like, great, well, let's just say we're going to put this show on in 3 months' time, or let's just say this album's going to be finished in 6 months. I find that makes the work happen, really.
Your projects are so different. When you're shaping your voice to other people's pieces, how do you sort of balance that?
I feel like it goes back to what we were just talking about, really, which is this collaboration thing. And I feel like if you're being honest with yourself as a collaborator, you will never be entirely yourself. You will always be whatever you are, when you are paired intimately with someone else, as a writer, as a creative. To me, that's just about really stepping into someone else's shoes and letting them step into yours so that you can make the thing that you make together. And if that process is like honoured, if you really give each other space to create together within that collaboration, you're gonna wind up with something that's unique, and wouldn't be like anything else. That's just a long way around of saying I have worked with very different people. I wrote Friday Night Dinner with Candy Gigi and the director Valentina Chesky, and they are brilliant, brave, bold, wild collaborators who, Candy as a performer, like you say, she's really not afraid of the grotesque.
Yeah.
And, the big political statements in her writing. She wrote a lot of the lyrics in that show. She's really not scared to go there.
No.
So, my job is just to meet her there and try and be as bold musically as she needs it to be. There's so many songs in that show that are like, what? The song happens in that context. And for listeners, I suppose it's probably better to go and do some research and find out about that show than talk about it right now. She had a big voice and a big Broadway vision for that show. So for me, it was a great chance to dive into the world of Gypsy and Fiddler on the Roof, the Barbra Streisand world of musical theatre that I love so much. But, it wouldn't be right for me to indulge in that world of musical theatre with a story like Angry Salmon, which is, this light, fun, Pixar-esque story about a family dealing with a mad crisis, which is that the world they know has completely fallen away from them because they've lived in a salmon farm their whole lives.
Yeah.
and suddenly found out that's, you know, in the realms of sort of chicken run storytelling, they found out that's not actually the way we should be existing in the world. So they escape and explore the oceans and try and discover themselves truthfully, you know.
Any day now, I am gonna know. Any day now, I will follow. I can't say how, but I know something has to change. So let the currents take me far away. I want to know how it feels to slow down.
That wouldn't really work well with the big sort of brassy world of musical theatre that Friday Night Sinner did. So one of the things I love about tackling each individual project is really finding its voice, you know, finding the voice of those characters and finding the voice of, you know, what do I sound like when I'm working with Candy Gigi? What do I sound like when I'm working with Francesca Forrestal, who I work with a lot? What do I sound like when I'm working with Ali James? Ali James and I, we have so many things in common, and particularly like we've worked together for a long time now, and we built shows together. And one of the things we really try to create is a sense of just nurture in the space with our actors, whether they're young actors like British Youth Music Theatre or professional actors. And Angry Salmon is really a story about that. Angry Salmon is a story about being open to the idea of a more balanced world, a more balanced space, listening to each other more, finding common ground, you know, on top of some themes of like looking after our planet and maybe questioning, you know, the insane scale that some parts of capitalism has reached, particularly in the food industry. When we have that much in common, just in our values, it's quite easy to marry together and then build a show from that. You know, and it's just not going to sound the same as those other shows, you know. I love that.
Yeah.
And then the last part of that, to finish my essay answer to your question, is just that I find it so rewarding to, you know, go to other places that you've not been before. I think if you're not surprising yourself as a creative, or, you know, if it ever feels too easy or too simple or feels like something you've done before, it's like, meh, what am I going to be excited about there? Why not push myself? And, you know, and again, that's just so much easier if you're working with someone who's inspiring you. And, you know, that's when it becomes easy to try something new out, because you're not walking that tightrope alone. Someone's sort of holding your hand and you get to go into new uncharted territory. You know?
Yeah. And do you find that decision making is quite collaborative as well, or do you sort of allow it to be someone's decision? Do you pass it over to the person who's maybe like, so I know Ali James was also directing. Was she therefore kind of the final word on things, or were you just working together?
Yeah, the second option.
Yeah.
Really, I do. I mean, it changes collaboration to collaboration. I work with one songwriter. We write songs together. He's called Paul L. Martin, or Paulus, as he's known, cabaret guru. Amazing artist and creator. And he has quite particular... He likes to be very particular about like grammar when I'm writing lyrics onto sheet music, you know, and I love that. I love it. I love passing that on to someone else. And then there's Ali James, who I think every decision gets made together, really. We know where our jobs are. I'm going to write the music and the lyrics, and Ali's going to keep the production, you know, the physical realization of the production is on her shoulders. Like, she's going to realize the show. And then in the middle, we're going to make this story happen, and the book's going to happen together. We're going to collaborate on that. But I think the absolute bottom line with Ali, and hopefully with anyone I work with, is that every decision needs to be done together. And if anything doesn't feel right to one of us, it's probably for a good reason. So I feel like on the whole, decisions are made together. You know, again, part of the, like, one of the most important things about collaboration, isn't it, is to build the thing that feels good to both of you, or all of you if it's a big team. I'm also a terrible decision maker. I'm so indecisive. Literally, I have to, like, even this morning getting this coffee, I was like, have an Americano. Just have an Americano. Just do that. Commit, Jordan. Commit to an Americano. So, you know, that's me in the rehearsal room sometimes.
Yeah.
So leaving a decision to me is not always the best idea. Thankfully, when it comes to like music and sound and harmony and things like that, I feel a lot more like, you know, I'm listening to my gut so heavily. It's very clear that I would like this to happen. But if someone else has a different feeling or a different instinct, I love hearing that and we'll make a decision together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you to describe your creative process, like as in where do ideas come from and what happens first? But I'm also aware that that might change in different processes with different collaborators. But maybe you could tell me, let's talk a little bit about your work with Francesca Forrestal. Yeah. I obviously have seen P.S. I'm a Terrible Person, and very early on, before it was sort of like before the full showing, I saw a very early version of it.
Wow.
And then I also saw Public Domain.
Yes.
Online during
Online?
lockdown.
You saw the online version?
I saw
That's
the online,
so
the streamed
lovely.
version.
Thank you for watching.
So I'm familiar with your work with her. And so tell me maybe about the creative process when you guys, where did those ideas come from?
Yeah. With Cheska specifically.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's different all the time. P.S. I'm a Terrible Person is a show we've been developing, which is inspired by true events, and is a show about a family dealing with a teenager's eating disorder, while she's also, this teenage daughter called Martha, while she's also coming of age, coming to terms with her queerness and figuring that out as well. It's really about, you know, when you're 15, 16 years old and you have the world on your shoulders, really. And that started because Cheska, we had just met. We had done an improvised musical together. Cheska does this incredible show. Cheska's also a drag king on the side. When they're not writing like incredible things, Cheska's a drag king and has this show called Drag Prov, which is an improvised drag musical. It's amazing. Go check it out. It's so great. Anyway, I played on that.
Can I just double check? Is Cheska they?
Cheska is they. Cheska's they.
I apologize. I misgendered them. I will.
I think that's quite new. I think it's quite new for them.
That's good for me to know.
Recent months, I think that's happened. But yeah, Cheska's they, them. I'm still doing that as well. Trying to remember the pronoun for Cheska. Good. Just because it's been so long. Anyway, when Cheska's not doing the drag show, they're writing stuff, and they came to me with this idea for a one-person show, and it was all about Cheska's experiences with everything that I've just spoken about with that story. And Cheska did go on to make that show. It was called Oddball, and it did the Camden Fringe. It did really well. It was a real success, and I did the sound design for that. Cheska had written some songs for it. It had moments of musical theatre, and even before that show was developed, we had sat down and Cheska had spoken me through the show, ideas for it, and it was immediately like, hang on a minute, this is emotionally huge. What if that was a bigger musical? So that's when that started to develop, you know. So the seed of that show came from this one-person show that Cheska started writing. Public Domain came about because of an event that Adam Lenson was doing called Newsfeed at the Southwark Playhouse. Adam Lenson is this brilliant creative director and dramaturg and does lots of different things in the world of theatre.
And recently performed
his one-man show in Edinburgh, which was beautiful. I can't remember its current name. I think it's Everything We Ever Wanted. Anyway, look it up because it's gone through a couple of variations in terms of its name. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful show. Adam had run this night called Newsfeed, where he asked writers to look at the news that week and respond to it with musical theatre. And Cheska and I were in Chichester at the time doing a workshop on P.S. I'm a Terrible Person at the university down there. And just like trying to take our minds off of that at like 2 a.m. one night, we were scrolling through Facebook and there was this interview between Katie Porter, senator in the States, and Mark Zuckerberg. And it was so thrilling to watch because she's this incredible, articulate, politically driven person who just ripped him to shreds. And he was this inarticulate, shell of a man.
Yeah.
And we were just like, let's musicalize that. Let's just perform that. And we did it verbatim. We took it verbatim and turned it into, effectively, we tried to go like, okay, what if a Hamilton cabinet rap battle felt a little bit more Croydon, felt a little bit more British kind of garage music vibes. You know, what if we drew the line between that and British musical theatre? And yeah, that's what we did. We created that and performed it at the Southwark Playhouse. Then the week after that, Adam was like, okay, so someone's dropped out of Signal, which was this series of concerts that Adam ran for new musical theatre writers. Would you do another song, maybe in the same vein? And Cheska and I were like, yes, we will. Because there was this other interview, again with Mark Zuckerberg, where he had allowed, I want to say CBS, I can't remember.
Yeah.
One of the American TV channels,
Yeah.
primetime TV channels, into their house to film the lives of the Zuckerbergs, you know, to lift the curtain on what it was like to be a Zuckerberg. And it was just this, again, incredibly nuanced 6-minute video where you saw some vulnerability in these people that, you know, effectively are running the world at the moment. You know, they're at the top of the world right now. They sort of transcend politics, really, don't they? The people that own these mega companies. And you saw some vulnerability, but you also saw some stuff that felt so unbelievable, so fake and scripted. You know, it was just, it made for really dramatic watching, and it was compelling. And the one thing that we thought could make it even more compelling was to musicalize it. So we did. And we, again, took it verbatim and created this piece of musical theatre that hopefully allows the viewer to, you know, look at this real scenario between two parents and their kid and just zoom out a bit and look at them as human beings, where we don't often look at people like Mark Zuckerberg as a human being. We look at him as almost a political figure or a celebrity or a robot, depending on your opinions of Mark Zuckerberg. Anyway, that's how Public Domain started. The show about our relationship with our online identities and our relationship to truthfulness online came out of that, you know, a couple of opportunities to be creative.
We came here for the friends, then we got to know the friends of our friends, the friends of our friends, the friends of our friends. Then our old friends from middle school, our mum and our ex, joined forces to wish us a happy birthday. Then we discovered our uncle who used to play in a band, and we realised he was young once too. And we found others just like us. And just like that, we felt a little less alone. And just like that, we felt a little less alone. And just like that, we felt a little less alone. And just like that, and just like that.
So again, totally different.
And took on a very digital life because of the situation we were all in at the time, which was basically lockdown.
Yeah. We felt so, I mean, it's hard to describe how it felt emotionally because it was so many varied feelings, you know. It felt very serendipitous that we had started writing a show about identities online, and then the pandemic happened and suddenly everyone was online. And we had already written, I think, 3 songs for this show and were developing the ideas. I think we had it booked into the Edinburgh Fringe in 2020. Yeah, we had it booked into the Edinburgh Fringe. We were going to do Underbelly at the Edinburgh Fringe. Cheska and I were going to perform this show. We didn't know what it was going to be yet, but we knew it was going to be about these themes, and we knew it was going to explore them with these characters, with these, you know, for anyone who doesn't know the show, it follows Mark Zuckerberg and his wife and their relationship over about 5 years, and it follows 2 influencers. One's a millennial influencer who's like a health guru on YouTube, and one of them's a Generation Z influencer who's very popular on TikTok, and sort of having an identity crisis is their status quo. And that's the show. Anyway, yeah, we were booked in to do it at the Fringe, and then when we were suddenly thrown into the worlds of, you know, just existing online, you know, again, it's impossible to describe what that felt like, because whenever we were making material around that show, we just thought, okay, let's zoom out and let's look at everything we can here that, you know, we could musicalize or talk about without trivializing anything right now, you know, because everyone needed a laugh at that point in time. also everyone needed something to engage with online. So I guess we had an opportunity to create a show that had a meta level to it. So when you watch the streamed version from the Southwark Playhouse, it was very surreal. Cheska and I were doing rehearsals in masks, like singing the full show in masks. We were in a studio basically with me, Francesca, Adam directing, Joe and Nikki from Auburn Jam, who did sound design on it and produced the album and stuff, and Christian Chorney, who was the sound designer. And that was it. It was the 6 or 7 of us in the room, and there was no audience in the room, etc., etc. We all know how streamed theatre works. Anyway, it was
We
surreal.
don't. It's great to know.
Okay, good. This is an insight. Okay, good. Yeah, it was really strange. It was very strange, especially with a new musical. To be sharing a new musical for the first time without any sense of whether there's an audience there having a good time or not was so weird. Cheska and I did the first performance of that show. We got off stage and we're like, we have no clue if that was good or not. We have no clue if anyone enjoyed that or not. We have no clue if it worked or not. We just all... It was such a great example of everything we were talking about earlier. Just everyone collaborating. Everyone just went for it. Everyone had faith that it was a story we wanted to tell, and it was told in a way that excited us and compelled us, and it felt truthful to us. So we went for it. And thankfully, people responded really well to it. And, we were really lucky to get a great amount of people watching it. And then a live production afterwards. This was really exciting.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit earlier about opportunities opportunities to be creative. Do you feel like there are enough opportunities in new British musical theatre? I know it's a bugbear with a lot of people that there just aren't. And I wonder what your opinion is.
Yeah, it's a big thing to think about because you're looking at an entire business there, really, aren't you? We're looking at the business of theatre. I think it's such a big thing to think about. Let's zoom in, just think about theatre rather than, because in many ways, what we're just talking about there is, are there enough opportunities for new writing? And that's a hard question because the answer is there's never any opportunities for new writing. People are just always writing and should always be writing. Whether there's competitions out there or theatres looking for new work, that's sort of by the by. Sometimes there will be, sometimes there won't be. I think it's hard that we live in a country that doesn't always celebrate musicals as a vital art form. I certainly think if you look at America, there's just a bit more appreciation for musicals that we don't quite have here. We have a culture here of we totally get them and we put them on a lot. There's just seems to be a little more emphasis on them being entertainment things rather than like we could watch a musical that feels culturally significant. But I think that's changing. Which I think is amazing. I think it would be great if there were more opportunities for new musical theatre writing, but I have no idea what that looks like. No idea. There are so many of us out there writing new musicals and developing new shows, whether that's on a big scale or a small scale. I really think the only thing we can do is keep writing and keep making stuff, because I don't think there's a model. I don't think there's a set way that new shows get off the ground. It's lovely to think there is. I'd love to think there's a set, path for shows, but I couldn't name you a single new musical that's, made it meaning, been put on in the last 10 years in this country that's had the same journey as another one.
It's true.
I think everything is, I think it's really hard to sum up feelings on something as open as opportunities, because I strongly believe in making your own opportunities, but that implies resources and money and finances and things. Sometimes you just don't have that, and we have to work. We've got to keep earning money, so you don't have time to write stuff. So it's really hard to boil things down to just make your own work. Even I think if anything was to change, and I say that aware that things are changing, but I think if anything else was to change, I just would love to see money. It's the truth. Honestly, I think it just comes down to money. I'd love to see somewhere prioritize some of their funding and put it towards musical theatre. For example, Birmingham, the Birmingham Hippodrome has just opened this new department for new musicals, which is like, I cried when I heard that. I just thought it was so... I cry a lot. But I cry a lot, but it did move me. I was really moved by the fact that they had, you know, whether they've got the money or not, I've got no idea. But whatever they've got, they've clearly got a chance to do that in that theatre, to open a department, to put some focus on new musicals. One of the things I really believe in is that musicals are their own thing. I don't think you can talk about musicals and blur them in with plays with songs and plays that have music or anything like that. I think you have to see them as their own beast. You wouldn't talk about physical theatre and opera in the same category.
No.
You just wouldn't, and you wouldn't push them together for funding and things. I really think musicals need their own work and their own attention and their own process. And I think it's so heartwarming to see that a theatre just, you know, has something going on where they're highlighting the difference between musicals and other things. Does that make sense? Like, it,
Yeah.
you know, for them to be saying musicals are their own thing, so they need their own department. I think it would be great to see that in more places, you know, because I think that would then just bleed into other areas and highlight for other theatres and other parts of the arts in the UK and further afield that musicals are so different in their own beasts, you know. We all know that their own beasts because they require a lot of money. They are bigger than plays. They require other departments that plays don't always require. But it's nice to see that creatively they're being seen as their own thing, you know. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it
it's a long way around it
absolutely-
because it's a tricky question.
No,
I
it
think.
absolutely makes sense. And so when you were starting out, obviously, I mean, you were writing from a very young age, but did you at any point self-produce, or were you able to kind of get funding behind you at an early stage?
It's funny, I've sort of always walked the line of self-producing, but I've never ever had to do that alone, ever. I've been very lucky in many situations to have someone else take that role. Often people have worked with me on things, so I've been involved in the production process or involved in the producing process, but I've never fully self-produced anything, really. Not explicitly, no, but I've always worked in some capacity, you know, organising things, creating sketch. I love the idea of it, and I think if I wanted to be a producer, I would commit myself to that path a bit more. But there are people out there doing that much better than I. I think if you're going to be a writer, you have to be a producer.
Yeah.
That's the tricky line here, where it's like, no, I've never self-produced, but I've sort of always self-produced. You know, I've always been involved in the decision-making aside of just the creative side of things. I've always been there on that side of the panel. And I think half the reason I've ever had anything on is because I'm willing to have those conversations. And I love those conversations about how viable is this? What's our budget? What does it look like? How can we actually make this happen? Because I think, you know, you can't be a writer without also being a bit rational about what's possible and what's not. It's all part of the canvas you're given that makes writing exciting. You know, why write something if you don't know, okay, I've got this budget and I've got 2 actors and we're doing it in 6 months. To me, that's where you have to be a bit of a producer. Yeah, growing up, I was very lucky after I did Fred, to call back to that, which we'll never talk about again. My school heard about it and said, if you write something proper, we'll put it on.
Amazing.
So that was like the first time I'd ever had something put on. And again, you know, it wasn't self-producing. No one was producing really. But my IT teacher was directing and my music teacher was building set. And, you know, I was orchestrating and there was a team of us writing. We had a writer's room. We were all 14 years old and had like an after-school writer's room. And none of us knew what that was. We never called it a writer's room. What we had was like writing club, and everyone would come along and 7 of us would put the script to this musical together. That's why the show was 4.5 hours long. But we won't talk about that again. Anyway, after that, a local guy in Weymouth had, you know, I was playing for the local community theatre groups, and I wound up playing for the local GNS group, Gilbert and Sullivan group, and the guy who ran that had heard I'd written a musical, and he said I think it was his godfather or his grandfather is passing away. He's terminally ill, and he has money that he would like to see put into a new musical about this story. And he told me the story about a village called Tyneham, which is a Dorset village that in 1942, all the citizens of this village, tiny village, only about 300 people, they were kicked out of their homes and spread across the country so that the Ministry of Defence could use the land for training grounds. And they were all promised their homes back. And then when the war ended, they were not given their homes back. It was an incredibly traumatic time for them all, and they were left strewn across the UK. And to this day, Tyneham is still, it's a ghost village. It is still It still belongs to the Ministry of Defence. All of the houses that everyone lived in have all been preserved. So you can walk around that village now, and it's like you're walking around a village from nearly 100 years ago. It feels like a real ghost town. It's
That's strange.
It is strange. It is strange. But this man called Jeff had said, will you write this musical? We've got money. Let's put it on. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't like a professional experience. There was no one involved who was a professional, but I got paired with a writer who's one of my best friends in the world now. He's called Vince Jones, and he used to be a history teacher and then a head teacher. And he was 69 years old, and I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
But Jeff, this guy who had this idea and had this money, was like, you two will work well together. And what then began was this process of I would sort of share with Vince everything I knew about like Jason Robert Brown and Stephen Sondheim, and Vince would share with me everything he knew about Cole Porter and Roger Hammerstein.
Yeah.
And we started a theatre company called Generations Apart. And that theatre company, again, it wasn't professional, but we were putting on the show. So we were casting it, we were figuring out the practicalities of doing it, finding a local theatre, sorting out promotion, working with videographers and a marketing team. And I was 16, so kind of from that age, I was doing things that maybe a producer would do. And again, I would just never say I was a producer or am a producer, because I feel like that undermines producers who do so much work in that world and are so committed to that side of things. But at the same time, I don't believe you can do any of this stuff without...
You're certainly not resting on your laurels waiting for someone to come along and be like, let me produce your musical.
No. That is the death of writing.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're someone who's new to this whole writing thing, what's your advice to someone who's like, I have this great idea for a musical?
Keep going. Do it. Just do it. I could not sum up advice for that person. I have a lot of empathy for that person, whoever you are out there, whether you're in my position and have written a ton of things and are still going, or you're just starting, or whatever, really. I think for anyone who's making their own work, just keep going back to the love of it. Work with other people. Like, don't do it for yourself. My goodness me. Like, just there's no point. Like, don't go out there trying to make work because you want to achieve that success or fame or whatever it is. Like, just make sure that's not there. If it's there, things are going to be really hard because you won't be open to other people, and other people are everything, really, when it comes to getting stuff on. To collaborate, and check in with how much you love it all the time. You know, love the story you're telling, love the way you're telling it, love the people you're telling it with. And stuff will happen. Have faith that stuff will happen. You know, there's competitions out there, and there's things to apply for, and there's funding to apply for. Go for it, but don't prioritize that over writing something. Get something down on paper. Phoebe Waller-Bridge says you can always edit a bad page. You can't edit a blank page. And I really believe in that. You have to just put something down, because if by the end of a couple of months you've got something to share with someone, then you can go. You can make anything happen then. So I guess that would be my first thought of advice. I hope that sounds...
Yeah, that's great. And last thing I was going to ask you is there anything that's inspiring you in musical theatre at the moment? Anything you've seen recently, or not even that recently?
Wow. Tons of things. Some specific shows. I mean, Operation Mincemeat, I think, is such an inspiring story.
Yeah.
Not just the story of the show
Glorious.
itself. It is glorious, isn't it? I feel very lucky to have been depping on that recently in the
I
orchestra pit.
know,
which
I
is
saw. I was so
exciting.
jealous.
I literally couldn't be a happier boy. I'm telling you, I finished a day of doing that, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. I've only played the show like 6 times.
They're phenomenal.
They're
aren't
unbelievable.
they?
They're unbelievable writers and creatives, and I think it's just a shining beacon of collaboration. I think it really is an example of what can be achieved if you just work together with people that inspire you and make something happen that inspires you. Don't forget, oh my goodness, part of the reason that's such a good show is I'm pretty sure they crack up. They love each other. They support each other.
Yeah.
And they move each other and inspire each other in that show. So that's what rubs off on all of us, you know.
Yeah.
I love, one of the things I do is Showstopper, the improvised musical, and that's at the core of that show as well. I'm going to sound very biased, but I really do find Showstopper really inspiring. And I recommend people watch it whenever they can if they need a lift, because what you're watching when you watch Showstopper, or what we get when we do Showstopper, is literally an injection of collaboration and faith and teamwork. because that's all that show is. It's completely improvised. So when you get on stage, you have no script or score. All you have is each other. And so all you can do is inspire each other, trust each other. And I find that immensely inspiring. And the last thing I'll mention is Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder, which is just incredible. I think the cast are really inspiring. I think the writing's really inspired. I think the show is so brilliantly contemporary and funny, original, exciting. I find it very, very moving watching a musical about two friends. I wish we had more of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could name you a single British musical about two friends.
Yeah.
I might. Please correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Please correct me
We'll
if
get
I'm wrong.
emails.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
watch that, two female friends. It's
I totally agree.
Yes, you know. What about you? Can I ask you the same question?
I mean, I feel like you've stolen all my answers.
Oh, sorry.
But
My bad.
I mean, yeah, as you say it, there's so much. Do you know, I saw a really hilarious musical, and I actually, all of the ones you said would come like top of my. Mincemeat changed my perspective recently, like watching. But again, a company that are more, started on the sort of comedy side and now have transitioned into a musical, and I thought it was so tight, slick. It's at Southwark now, I want to say. Cops, the musical.
Police Cops,
the musical.
Yeah,
I thought
those
it was
guys.
so funny, so clever, and I think there is more of that now. People going, well, like this musical genre has heightened what they've done, like, you know, and made it so accessible to so many people, and added such a layer to it. And again, they obviously are a company that work together and have worked together for many years and get a kick out of each other.
Yes,
and
the
I love
collaboration
that.
is you can see it. It's
Yeah.
tangible.
Yeah.
Watching, I love those guys. I haven't seen Police Cops the musical yet, but I cannot wait.
Hilarious.
Oh my goodness, I need to sort a ticket out like now.
You'll love it.
If I can get one, I bet you I can't. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Those boys are so connected and
Yeah.
clearly, like you say, just inspire each other, don't they?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
and it shows, and it means that the laughs are so solid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
great.
It's so interesting that all of these shows are musical comedies, I think.
Yes.
Kathy and Stella, Mincemeat,
Yeah.
Police Cops. I think it's quite British. We've got this brilliant undermining sense of humour,
Yeah.
right? This ironic sense of humour that suits musical theatre so well.
Yeah.
They're like best friends, musical theatre and a British sense of humour. It means that I think we find it harder to be earnest, which musicals are so good at as well, right?
Yes, true,
I went
true.
to see Next to Normal.
I couldn't get a ticket.
Yeah, sorry, but
No.
you will, because it will
It will
transfer.
transfer.
It's an unbelievable thing of wonder and
Yeah.
beauty. It's unbelievable. But one of the things I really took away from it was like, yes, the Americans do earnestness so well, and it's something that we don't do a lot of here, you know. But when we do, I look forward to us having some more musicals that do earnestness really well. But I think it's really nice to see moments of that.
Well,
in
I
these
say
shows.
we need to say that, but the most moved I've been for a long time was the Flowers song in Mincemeat.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
it's the punch after the like
Dear
ha ha
Bill.
ha ha ha, and then you're just like
Yeah, it is a gut punch.
It was a gut punch.
If
It was
anyone
so
can
beautiful.
find that album on whatever they stream music on, Dear Bill is the song. You mean?
Dear
yeah.
Bill. Sorry, yes, I call it the Flower song, but yeah,
it's got beautiful references to flowers in it. It's
Yeah.
like the structure of the song is built on the flowers. Yeah, it's beautiful, and I really feel that. I totally know what you mean. I only mean to say like Next to Normal is like totally earnest, like every song, and in the UK we do it very well when we earn it, and I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I really. I guess I'm just interested to see what a British Next to Normal would be like, you know.
Yeah.
Whether we would even manage that here, because we are so much more ready for the wit and the irony and the tight jokes and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to finish this
Oh,
because I've just enjoyed it so much.
It's been a total pleasure.
But our time is ticking away. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the chat. It's been amazing. And I would love to take a quick opportunity to say how much I admire everything you do. And I'd love to say thanks for all the things that Clue has given me, an amazing array of opportunities to work. And we did a show that I've got to say it because it's got to be said. Clue wrote this show years ago and hired me onto that, and has always been like working on shows, making your own work. Like you are one of the people that inspires me often to do this stuff. So just to
Oh,
put that
thank
out
you,
there.
Jordan. That means a huge amount coming
Not at
from
all.
you.
It's a real privilege to be chatting to you. So
Thank
thanks.
you. Thank you so much for joining us for this new season of the Make It Work podcast. Please follow us on Instagram at Make It Work Podcast UK. Or if you had any questions or comments about the show, please email us at makeitworkpodcastuk@gmail.com. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our podcast so you can continue to join us, learn with us, and make it work.
I think if we take everything as gospel truth, there's no room for us
No.
in it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree. It's like, I mean, it's not really the same, but it's like I do courses now, and I think maybe I've gotten to an age where I'm like, I don't really, like, I see where you're coming from, and yes, I'm sure it has applications, but I think there's no universal truths in any art.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly when it comes to the subjective side of art, it's hard because with art, you have to have technique, which to some degree you can be objective about.
Yeah.
You can be objective about what good singing technique is and what bad singing technique is. But you can only be objective to a certain degree about what makes some, like, a character compelling.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so much you can go down the road of, like, if your character does a nice sympathetic thing that makes us empathize with them, you know, then you're all good. There's only so far you can go down that road, I think, you know, without just sort of losing inspiration. And like you say, it's hard to hit where the universal truths, you know, are, basically.